Salvete omnes. This is chapter 45, exercise A. The instructions for this exercise are to translate the following English sentences into Latin. We are focusing this chapter on substantive clauses of purpose, otherwise known as indirect commands. As a quick review, purpose clauses. We can have adverbial purpose clauses. These are adverb clauses that explain why, because adverbs why. The explanation for why is also an adverb, adverbial clause, introduced by ut or ne, and then followed by a verb in the subjunctive. These are dependent subjunctive clauses. If the clause contains a comparative, it will be introduced by quo instead of ut. Adjectival, the adjectival flavor of purpose clauses, otherwise known as the relative clauses of purpose, introduced by the relative pronoun qui, quae, quod, agreeing with an antecedent in gender and number, not necessarily in case. And then the substantive clauses of purpose, the indirect commands, the focus of this chapter, introduced by verbs of commanding and ordering, asking, entreating, persuading, urging, and allowing, entrusting, followed by ut or ne, and then a subjunctive verb. These are noun clauses because they tell you what is being urged, what is being commanded, what is being asked, what is being allowed. What thing am I urging you, willing you to do, ordering you to do? That's going to be a noun clause. So like one big long noun. Reminder of sequence of tenses. If the main introductory verb, if the verb introducing the dependent subjunctive clause is present tense, future tense, or future perfect tense, or present subjunctive or imperative, then the verb in the dependent subjunctive clause is in the present subjunctive. We call this primary sequence. Related, but not the same, is secondary sequence. That's if the main verb is imperfect, perfect, or pluperfect tense. Then the following dependent clause will have a verb in the imperfect subjunctive. This is called sequence of tenses, primary sequence and secondary sequence. So for number one, sententia prima, he had begged me not to sail. We need a verb for beg, and we have a few. There are going to be a lot of variations on this assignment. So beg, we can use petto, pettere, petivi, petitus, plus ab in the ablative. It's an intransitive verb to mean to beg of someone. We can use imploro, implorare, imploravi, imploratus, like the English implore. It is a transitive verb taking the accusative, as well as oro, orare, oravi, oratus, to beg or beseech, also taking the accusative case. And I'm going to use oro, orare, oravi, oratus. I want the third singular pluperfect active indicative, so oraborat takes the accusative, I am being begged, so may. So something like may oraborat. If you're going to use another form, you can say a me petiverat, or just me imploraverat. Now, what had he begged me not to do? What thing did he beg me not to do? He begged me not to sail. This is a noun clause. This is a substantive, that is a noun, clause of purpose. He begged me. Why do you do that? Well, so that, for the purpose of me not sailing. This is what he begged me not to do. So indirect command. Introduced by ut or ne, because it's negative, I'm going to use ne. And then we are in secondary sequence because the introductory verb is pluperfect. So imperfect subjunctive, navigaverem. Navigarem. Me oraverat ne navigarem. He had begged me so that I might not sail. He had begged me not to sail. Optime, sententia secunda. We shall persuade them to remain. We shall persuade them to remain. For persuade, we want persuadeo, persuadere, persuasi, persuasus. Takes the dative case, always takes the dative. It's an intransitive verb. So we shall persuade, it's the second conjugation. Persuadebimus, persuadebimus. And them is going to be the dative plural of is, ea, id, and that's going to be eis. Eis. Eis persuadebimus. We shall persuade them. And then what? What thing shall we persuade them to do? What? What substantive? What noun clause? To remain, so that they may remain. To remain. We want maneo, manere, mansi, mansus, second conjugation. So maneant, so that they may remain. Maneant. We want the present subjunctive because we are in primary sequence. Future tense. That means present subjunctive here. Ut maneant. Ut maneant. Eis persuadebimus ut maneant, so that they may remain. Tertia, sententia tertia. I asked him to depart. I asked him to depart. You have a couple options for asking verbs. You can use the transitive rogo, rogare, rogavi, rogatus. You can use the intransitive quaero, quaerere, quaesivi, quaesitus, or peto, petere, petivi, petitus, or postulo, postulare, postulavi, postulatus. The last three are intransitive and take ab plus the ablative to show what of whom you are asking this thing. So if you're going to use one of those three, instead of accusative him, you're going to use ab eo. Ab eo. I'm just going to go ahead and use the transitive rogo. So eum, the accusative eum, rogavi. Eum rogavi. We are in secondary sequence because rogavi, I asked, is perfect tense. So I asked him to depart. I asked him so that he might depart. We want the imperfect subjunctive of pick a verb for depart, discedo, excedo, ab eo. I'm going to go with discedo. So discederet. Discederet. Imperfect subjunctive, discederet. Eum rogavi ut discederet. I asked him so that he might go. He influenced me to fight. He influenced me to fight. Influence is actually a form of duco. It's ad duco, ad ducere, ad duxi, ad ductus. So he influenced me. It's a transitive verb. Me ad duxit. Me ad duxit. He led me to do it. Duco. Me ad duxit. So that I might fight. This is the noun clause. This is the substantive. This is the what did he influence me to do? To fight, so that I might fight. So we want the imperfect subjunctive because we're in secondary sequence. This is perfect tense. Imperfect subjunctive of pugno, pugnare, pugnavi, pugnatus. So pugnarem, pugnarem. Me adduxit ut pugnarem. Ut pugnarem. Quinta, sententia quinta. They were demanding of me that I yield. They were demanding of me that I yield. So to demand of someone, that is going to be postulo, postulare, postulavi, postulatus. It takes a plus the ablative to demand of someone, so that I might yield, because this is secondary sequence. They were demanding, imperfect tense. They were demanding of me. So postulabant, postulabant, me postulabant, so that I might yield. To yield is cedo, cedere, cessi, cessus. It's a third conjugation, and we want the imperfect subjunctive. So cederem, ut cederem. Me postulabant, ut cederem, ut cederem. Sexta, sententia sexta. I advise you not to walk. You can hurt yourself. I advise you not to walk. To advise, it's the same as warn. That's moneo, monere, monui, monitus. It's a transitive verb, takes the accusative. So te, the accusative of to, you. So te moneo. Te moneo. Not what do I advise you? What thing, what substantive, what noun clause do I advise you not to do? Ne, and then we want the present subjunctive of ambulo, ambulare, ambulavi, ambulatus, because we are in primary sequence. This is present tense. We want present subjunctive here. So ambula is the present stem. First conjugation, change the A to an E. So I advise you so that you may not walk. Ne ambules. Ne ambules. Te moneo ne ambules. I advise you so that you may not walk. Septima, sententia septima. He commanded them to halt. He commanded them to halt. So we have a couple ways to do command words. So command, impero, imperare, imperavi, imperatus, which takes the dative, and mando, mandare, mandavi, mandatus, which also takes the dative. It can also mean to instruct. Because we're going to use mando for number 9, let's go ahead and use impero for number 7. He commanded, like an imperator is a commander. So he commanded them, takes the dative. Impero, imperare, imperavi, imperatus, imperavit, third person singular perfect, imperavit, active indicative. Eis, eis, he commanded dative plural eis because impero takes the dative. And then to halt. To halt is consisto, consistere, constiti, constitus. To really consto, to really stand there. Stand there so much that you just stop, you halt. So he commanded them so that they might halt, because we are in secondary sequence because of the perfect tense verb. So eis imperavit ut consisterent. Ut consisterent. So that they might halt. Imperfect subjunctive. Optime, octava, sententia octava. We warn you to flee. We warn you to flee. So this is te monemus, te monemus. So first person plural of moneo, monere, monui, monitus. Monemus, we warn you, present tense, primary sequence. You, moneo is a transitive verb, takes the accusative case, te monemus. And then what do we warn you to do? What noun clause? What substantive? What do we warn you to do so that you may flee? So that you may flee. Primary sequence, we want the present subjunctive. So flee is fugio, fugere, fugi. Make run over the u, fugitus. So we want fugi as the present stem. Add the a, fugia, and then the s. Fugias, ut fugias. Te monemus ut fugias, so that you may flee. Number 9, they are instructing her not to run. They are instructing her not to run. To instruct is mando, mandare, mandavi, mandatus, takes the dative. So they are instructing right now is mandant. It's like the English mandate, a command, an instruction. Mandant, it's just an easy first conjugation. They are doing it right now. Present tense, primary sequence, takes the dative. Ei, the dative of ea, isea, id is ei. It's one of the damn heteroclats. Ei mandant. And then what are they instructing her not to do? Not to run. That's the substantive. That's the indirect command. Don't do this thing. Don't do it. Introduced by ne because it's negative, and to run is curro, currere, cucurri, cursus. So not to run, we are in primary sequence. We want the present subjunctive. Cur is the stem. We want to add the A, cura, and then T. Ne curat, ne curat. Mandant ne curat. And decima, sententia decima, he ordered that the work be finished. He ordered that the work be finished. And like I said, you have a couple ways to do order verbs. So he ordered, like mando or impero. Now, if you used eubeo, if your first inclination was to go to eubeo for order, keep in mind that eubeo does not, and I repeat, does not use an indirect command. Eubeo takes a subject accusative and an objective infinitive. So if you wanted to use eubeo for number 10, it would be he ordered that the work be finished. So he ordered iusit, that the work, opus, be finished, confici. Confici. It's got an accusative work and then a present infinitive confici in the passive, be finished. He ordered that the work be finished, confici or perfici. If we were going with the indirect command, substantive clause of purpose way, like we're supposed to in this exercise, we'll use impero or mando, he ordered, so imperavit, that the work, that the opus, he ordered imperavit ut opus or labor be finished. So we have he ordered perfect tense, secondary sequence. We want the imperfect subjunctive for finished, configurator. Configurator, perfigurator. Ut opus configurator. Ut labor perfigurator. Some combination of that. Remember, eubeo does not take an indirect command. Optime! Very well done. You are now ready to move on to the next exercise.